And I have with me the filmmaker Harish from Passcode. It was actually funny because I met Harish when I was going to the Alexandria Film Festival because we showed our film, Meteoric, and our films were in the same film block. And I saw Passcode and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. So I was like, Harish, afterwards, I connected with him and I was like, Harish, I run a film festival. I want your film screen at our festival. And here we are. Now here we are. So Harish, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about your film, because a lot of people watching this Q&A are probably going to watch it before they check out the films. So after they watch the Q&A, they may be like, oh, I want to check out that Passcode film. Or maybe they've seen the film already and they're kind of wanting to get to know you as the filmmaker. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where was the inspiration behind Passcode?
Yeah, so Passcode, well, first of all, thank you so much for having Passcode screen at your film festival. It is kind of a match made in heaven, especially with your festival and Passcode specifically. Passcode was made in Washington, D.C. It was inspired by the 2021, early 2021 sort of boom of like Dogecoin and sort of that crypto space. And then also just sort of everything was very positive in the media about it. It was only golden at that point. And like any good artist should, I sort of wanted to make sure there was a good three-dimensional view of that and what it also said about human nature and society at large. And so, I was reading up about it, and I sort of like thought of the idea of like, everyone has to have their wallet, everyone has to have their passcodes to get into their wallet. And I was really interested in seeing what it would be like to put somebody through the ringer of trying to find that passcode, while also sort of thinking about sort of romantic comedies and how they work. And at the exact same time, I was reading this New York Times article that showed a actual couple, or a few people who legitimately had lost their passcodes to their crypto wallets, which at that time, because of the boom, was worth millions of dollars. And they were going through almost absurd, inhuman things to go to try to find those passcodes. So all of that sort of came together. I was also reading a lot of Kafka and a lot of sort of like absurdist sort of dramedies. And I sort of thought like this is kind of the perfect time to make this. I've also been like, historically, I've always sort of made poems. And I was kind of I wanted to sort of poems, sort of like, character studies, maybe slower burn movies. And I was really interested in making something sort of more poppy and quick and fun. And I hope Passcode is that for people.
So Harish, like, how did you get into filmmaking to begin with? Like, did you grow up on the East Coast? Like, is this has this always been a passion?
Yeah, I grew up on the East Coast. I grew up in a small town in Maryland. Well, I wouldn't say it's a small town, it's a suburb. Very sort of Truman Show-esque, very sort of standard, nothing. It wasn't like a city. I didn't grow up in Washington, D.C., even though I was like 45 minutes north of Washington, D.C. I was about 30 minutes south of Baltimore in Maryland. And, when just like any sort of high school kid, sort of teenager, young teenager, preteen, I was sort of just always wanted to get out, thinking it was sort of stifling. And movies were sort of my movies and TV, but mostly movies were my way of sort of escaping. And I was watching movies as a thing of, I thought movies were just movies. I didn't know how they were made. I just thought they just appeared in the ennui of society, and I was just there to consume it. And then I sort of like, I think this was also the time when Wikipedia was really blowing up. I think I was like maybe like 12 or 13 when I started really getting obsessed with Wikipedia, specifically to like look at like artists, like writers, like historical figures,
their background.
and then, and get their backgrounds. And so I would just Wikipedia a movie and then realize that there was a whole production behind it, a director, a writer, a cinematographer, and there's like a shooting schedule and all of that. And so that was what happened really young. And I thought the only thing I could do right now as a high schooler, I mean, I started making films when I was like 13, 14. Only thing I could really do was write and maybe do some school projects. So writing was where I started with. And I've always thought of myself as a writer first. And screenwriting was something that sort of came naturally to me. So I feel really blessed and lucky to have found writing, screenwriting, and filmmaking. I made my first actual, I mean, I made some high school movies that were sort of smaller, like documentary style. But the first real movie I made was in college. I went to Duke University, and they had like a really great opportunity to make films there. And it was sort of like free reign for the students to do so. So I made my first short there, and it's sort of this art house sort of student film that's kind of tough to watch if I were to watch it right now. But it was, it changed my life. Like it got the hook in me, and so I've never really stopped. It's been sort of, I've always written, and I haven't always made every script I've written, but I've always always try to make the ones that I think have promise.
So it's interesting. So you wrote Passcode as well as directing it.
I did, yeah. I wrote it and directed it, and then sort of with me and Mike Kepka, and he's based in San Francisco. He was a photojournalist and a video journalist for San Francisco Chronicle, and then moved to the DC area. And then I contacted him. He had just moved and sort of set up a production house there. And we had been wanting to make this other sort of poem DC based movie that was going to be longer and more of a character study. And then COVID happened, and then that killed it. And then and that kind of lost its momentum. That script is still sitting in my drawer. But so then after COVID, I thought of this script idea and wrote it, and then sort of kind of produced it with Mike. Mike had sort of a production house, and I really trust his vision for it. He kind of has the perfect aesthetic for the movie, sort of like lots of close-ups, and sort of he's really good at face profiles, and I thought that would be really important for this.
So Mike was at the festival with you, right?
He was, yes. He came with me with his daughter and his wife.
Ah, got it. Okay. So you got connected with Mike, and then you shared with him the script, and you said, hey, like, I want to make this film, like, let's collaborate together.
Well, actually, it started off with me sort of saying cold calling. I had some leverage because the previous movie I'd made had done reasonably well. It came out okay. I liked how it came out. I thought it was pretty, I thought it looked good. It had some good characters. And I thought the script itself was actually the strongest part of it. And so I had some confidence in my screenwriting. And so he was sort of very expensive. I mean, I couldn't afford his sort of like his fee. Yeah. So what I did was I cold called him during COVID or before COVID and said, hey, what do you think about the script, which is the original of the poem script that I keep calling it that, but the slow script. And he's like, look, I'm really expensive. I have a lot of stuff that's on my plate, but I do want to get into narrative work because I'm kind of tired of like the industry work that I've been doing so often. And so I sent him my script and I said, hey, look, like if you want to do it, you can just read my script and see if you like it. And he did. He kind of could bite into it. He kind of understood what the vision was from the script. Then we had more meetings, then COVID. And then I just kept sending him. I still keep sending him lots of scripts and stuff. So yeah, he's one of the, I have like a sort of a list of cinematographers and people that I like to work with. And Mike is definitely, high on that list. And I'm hoping to continue to grow that list of like producers and filmmakers who can work with me.
So Harish, like, what is your like vision for like the future? Like, what do you want to do as a filmmaker? Like, is this something that you want to make as a career? Is this something that you want to do on the side? Like what's your like 5-10 year vision like for yourself as a filmmaker?
So the status of Hollywood right now is not great. I don't really know if we're making really original movies, adult films. I don't know if and I don't even know if the audience is necessarily, and I don't know if the audience is necessarily, wanting that. And so I think it might just be sort of a consumer, producer sort of agreement here. I think that, for my sensibilities as a filmmaker, I wouldn't want to go into the industry and sort of play that game because I'd just rather not, I'd rather just make the movies I want to make. So the crypto and the blockchain space has sort of like kind of created this opportunity to me. And despite everything that's happened with FTX, I don't think anything really changes. The technology itself is good. Yes. Just because there's a couple bad apples doesn't mean that that ruins the technology. And if it takes longer for it to become mainstream or even sort of midstream or like, whatever, even if it takes a little bit longer, I'm okay with that. Our vision, and I say our because there's a team sort of, is to, take a movie, take shorts specifically because of like the sort of current state of attention span and consumers, and take those and have stories that sort of build off of them. So sort of like the equivalent of Goosebumps. So like when people would read Goosebumps books, they would have like different plots of it towards it. And so our idea is to sort of create sort of an umbrella equity-based community that is built around sort of taking these stories. Obviously people have like, if I'm the original writer, then that is maybe has a bit more clout in that sort of group, but everybody would have an opportunity to share their idea of where they would want maybe a character to go or where they would want that arc to go. And so we're just working on producing like maybe Passcode 2. There's like another movie that's like another short that would be like cut up into little scenes, little postable scenes or chunks or clips that would then be sort of promoted on OpenSea and then with QR codes. And sort of just creating our own sort of studio thing that's kind of independent, that's based around real characters, real concepts, real ideas, and not sort of the cookie cutter superhero Marvel stuff that is great and serves a purpose, but it's just, I think there's something more to cinema, and there always has been, and that's what we're trying to do.
It's so interesting that you mentioned OpenSea, because I feel so. We Ashton Kutcher actually came and just talked about film and NFTs and just like NFT space, because he does have his nonprofit organization Thorn, and they've been, I know that in the crypto world right now there's a lot of like CSAM, like there's a problem with CSAM, which is like child sexual abuse material, right? And identifying which are like where the CSAM is so that they can take it down, right? And so the thing is, like, another thing we talked about was just film NFTs. And I personally had asked him a question, like, why don't you use your influence? Like, why don't you bring people into the NFT space, especially for film, because it's still very new and it hasn't even, begun yet. And, like he just, simply said, like, there's just not an audience there right now. And,
Yeah.
and I said, well, if you get on there, then you can bring the audience.
True.
You can bring a whole bunch of people, because right now, if you look in the NFT space, it's very toxic. They have discords, and even on Twitter, just a lot of the negativity that's out there. And I was just like, oh my gosh, you need to bring the positive people, like people who don't even know what an NFT is. It's like, if they all of a sudden see you and, even like celebrities like, Lindsay Lohan, who talked about NFTs, it's because of these celebrities that they're able to like bring, like a group of people who didn't know anything about NFTs, but they can become interested in them because these celebrities are talking about it, And so the thing is, like, when you mentioned, these like film, like NFTs, which is essentially kind of like what it sounded like you were talking about.
Yeah.
Is there just another, like, aside from like OpenSea, where you're going to have some of this content, like, I don't know, it's like, have you ever thought about having like a YouTube channel also, where you have a lot of this content, and then like maybe some of the stuff that like you see just, doing really well, like then you can like mint that on like OpenSea as like a film? Like, what are some of your thoughts around that?
We've had a lot of discussions about this exact topic, about how Ashton Kutcher said, there's not really an audience in the NFT space as it is, and especially with the sort of recession type thing that's going on with it, it's kind of, if even probably smaller, and the people who are more substantial and would probably want to be in it for the sort of cinematic experience are probably like maybe a little. I mean, that group has gotten smaller. I agree, though. I think that you would have to start it off with a YouTube channel of some sort, and then build sort of a following of some sort, and then and grow that way, and then move it away. Ultimately, though, I mean, the YouTube space has its own drawbacks as well. I mean, it's hard. I mean, one of the things is, and this is a thing with all artists. I mean, it's like this concept of how pure can you be versus as like an artist and as a storyteller and as like as an expresser of human condition versus what the reality of commerce is. And we are talking about this like extensively. My goal as a writer director, and obviously sort of having a say in how the vision of sort of our group goes, wants it to go towards as pure as we can make it, as sort of like real and human. But of course, we have people who are talking about how, YouTube needs to, you have to build a YouTube channel, and to do that, you have to do certain things. And we understand that, and we're still in a very, embryo stage as it is. Passcode is sort of our beta, and we're working towards like figuring out how to use Passcode, having it on YouTube, putting away, making it after the sort of festival run, and then knowing how we're going to promote it on YouTube, to then sort of have it as our real beta for sort of an open sea situation. But one of the things we have to do really is keep making content.
Yes.
That's what it comes down to, and that's what we're doing. We have another little short that we're pre-producing in Arkansas, which I think will be really interesting and relevant to a lot of people, especially with the news. And so keeping it fresh, keeping it as on topic for how the state of the world is, I think is really important. So I think our group is trying to make movies that are at one level really sort of shocking and sort of in your face, and then at another level entertaining, and then another level relevant to the sort of what's going on in the world as we speak. And so
question for you, why filming in Arkansas?
So, Arkansas is one of those states that is really especially affected by the legislation that came out regarding the abortion Supreme Court decision. So we want to make a movie about something kind of crazy, a little wild, and a little bit Kafkaesque, about that concept, and about like women, and who, and women in art. Women in the East Coast or the West Coast, they suffer for this decision that was made by the Supreme Court, but no one suffers more than Southern women, and their stories are undertold. And so we want to tell a story, a very short one, and maybe it's not really as character based as maybe in other stories, and
as like the message that you want to get across.
Yeah, and I think the message will be sort of like edgy, and it won't necessarily be as on the nose and sort of preachy, but it'll definitely have people talking, and that's our goal for any movie that our group makes.
That's awesome. So this is something that you have written already.
Yes, it's written. It's very short, very producible. We are trying to build sort of the funding. We have a team that's kind of available, and we're sort of building the pre-production around it as we speak. So
is this going to be, are you going to use same filmmaker that you used for Passcode, or the
No, I think we're going to use local Little Rock, Arkansas filmmakers.
Oh my gosh. So do you know local Arkansas filmmakers?
Yeah, we have a group. They had lived in Los Angeles for a while, and they're now in Little Rock, and they work with marketing, advertising. Everything's not completely locked down yet, but as we move forward, we'll definitely we're excited. I'm excited. I'm ready to shoot, but we want to make sure that everything is set. We're still sort of like in the early stages of getting casting ready and that sort of thing. So, but not a very dialogue heavy movie also, so that'll be interesting, and we will need some like CGI of some sort, and we can see how we can do that. Just one scene, but it'll be cool. I think it'll be something that could go viral, hopefully.
Yes. And then so with Passcode, with this project that you're working on right now, do you have a YouTube channel yet that you're creating to like house all this content? Like what are like because that's another thing, like our audience, like they're tech professionals, right? So they really don't know too much about this filmmaking process, like how to distribute it. We're going to have a panel talking about distribution, but distribution has changed so much in the past 10 years. It's just like, especially with like YouTube, I feel like YouTube was like a huge disruptor, like streaming platforms were a huge disruptor to the distribution space.
Yeah. So YouTube channel is, but I totally agree. The YouTube channel is coming. One of the things we want to make sure is that the original layer, the foundation of that YouTube channel has a good brand to it, something that people can bite into. And so again, hate to not have everything all set up as it is, but Passcode just got finished and was kind of the perfect beta for it. But we are working on towards like having the sort of baseline YouTube channel that has an edge to it, and has like a sort of a guerrilla brand to it underlying it just as it is, so that we're not rushing in, throwing out like a movie on there without any sort of like stabling force for audiences or whoever, investors, anybody to see. So if investors can understand just by looking at the YouTube channel with whatever the background is, whatever the name is, whatever that is, which is sort of all work in progress, and we're getting close, but if they can see that the right way and the way we want them to see it, then we can start just throwing content out there as it comes. But so we're in the embryo stages. Everything is happening all at once. We're not doing one thing at a time, sort of thing. And we're making the films and producing them, pre-producing them, rolling them out, understanding how we're putting them on as sort of a blockchain network, and that having that set up, and it's all going on at once. And so it's interesting. It's really just an honor to be at this festival specifically, especially because it's kind of the perfect place for us, knowing how the cinema is changing and kind of going towards Silicon Valley, and kind of already is there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's interesting too, because it's like, I feel like now it's like before in the entertainment industry, there used to be these gatekeepers, in Hollywood, with all these studios. But, like we mentioned earlier with, distribution changing so much, those gatekeepers don't really exist anymore. I mean, they're still there, but I just feel like, the average person can just kind of come in and they can create content now. And it's just, you hear about these like YouTubers that are making like millions and millions of dollars and buying these like crazy, like $1 million houses just from their YouTube, like income. It's like, you hear about people like, that used to work in tech as like an engineer. They're like quitting their like 6-figure jobs to like become a YouTuber, because they see like the profitable, they're like making content like full time now. It's just like, it's just so mind blowing just how different everything is now. Right. And just that opportunity is available to anybody who kind of wants to step into it and just really like, go towards it.
Right. And there's going to be future iterations. What we know now is what the YouTuber is. You think of Mr. Beast, you think of Casey Neistat, you think of that classic YouTuber, and that's going to change too. There's going to be iterations of what that is moving forward. It might not be like an individual person. It could, it could be sort of like almost like its own studio. And I mean, Mr. Beast basically runs his own studio. So, and so, that's kind of what we're trying to do as well. And, YouTube is I'm on YouTube all the time, and there is an element as an artist to want to be sort of disrupting and sort of say, well, why YouTube? But YouTube does a pretty decent job for what for what it is, and it's a great platform. And
well, it's like a business thing too. It's like you just have to know how to monetize on it, right? It's like, I think that like you have to have like at least 1,000 subscribers, and then you have to have, I believe it's like 40 or 50,000 hours, that people have watched, and then you create an AdSense account, and then you can literally start monetizing. Like you just put ads on your videos, and it's like they literally put money in your account, like that you can just
pretty great, yeah.
So it's like
Google's a pretty good company.
Yeah. And it's just like everybody, like you said, like everybody's on it, everybody's like watching content, this like, like shorter content, longer content. If they don't know how to do something, like they go on YouTube, and while they're on there, they go down like the rabbit hole of like, other videos. Right.
Right.
And so it's just like, again, it's just an interesting thing to think about for the future as like a filmmaker, as like a content creator. And I guess like what are like the other, aside from filmmaking, like what is it that you do, like you yourself, like personally? And I'm wondering, like, are the stories that you're going to tell like related to what you do outside of filmmaking?
Right. So I'm going to be a doctor, an MD, in about a year.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, and then I see patients pretty much every day. And those are a lot, those patients and their stories are a huge source of my inspiration. When I was growing up, or not growing up, even the last few years, there was this doubt of whether I could actually pull this off, because, books take so much from me or you or anyone. And then I was sort of inspired by people like Anton Chekhov and, great artists and artist doctors previously, and how much they took the characters that they saw, the stories that they saw, the tragedies, the absurdities, the triumphs from their patients, and then put that into art. And honestly, there's like an element of, people, a lot of people say that I can't do it. And currently I am doing it. So, there hasn't been any problems. We'll see as time goes on, and time pulls me in certain ways, I'll have to make decisions down the road about how, whatever I'm going to do. But currently, as it stands, I've been able to do both just exactly the way I wanted it to. So
I don't understand the naysayers. Why are they saying that you can't do it?
well, they just, well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't understand. I understand that maybe they think that there's not enough time in the day, perhaps, but there's been no problems as long as you're sort of, um, clear about what I want to do and what I'm going to do, and sort of not hedge and sort of get all over the place. Then I've had no issues, and so the vision has never been the issue, and then the execution is always challenging, but it's just going to continue no matter what. So
last question, what type of doctor do you want to be, or are you going to be?
Well, first I'm just working on getting this MD, and but I'll be done soon, and I've done most of the hard work already, so almost done with that. And once I get the MD, we'll see. Maybe we'll see, going into internal medicine of some sort, being able to see more patients, talk to them rather than a thing like surgery where you're not really talking to them and not getting as many stories. So something like internal medicine sort of inform that, sort of talking to people, understanding how human nature works, listening to like dialogue or how people talk, and
yes, absolutely.
And
I'm
that.
sure just like hearing stories of just like miraculous things happening that are just like scientifically impossible, and then just seeing what's happening, and you're just like, wow, like I didn't know that that was possible. Like,
right. And then
this can be like an inspiration for a story.
Exactly. And then also the insight I get into like human frailty, human sadness, human like resilience and that sort of thing, which is always interesting. And then of course having sort of plots that are around sort of there's a great filmmaker everyone knows, George C. Miller, who made the Mad Max movies, and he was a doctor.
Yes.
And he was a doctor throughout, for most of his, like for a big chunk of his career, especially in the beginning. And if you watch that first Mad Max movie with Mel Gibson, there's some hospital scenes, and so he was definitely inspired by that. And I'll look to George Miller, and I'll look to Anton Chekhov for inspiration.
So Harish, if people want to get connected with you in the future and they want to follow along with your filmmaking journey, what are your socials? Where can people find you? Like, let people know, like, how can they get connected with you?
Yeah. So the way to get contacted with me as we speak is you can call me or you can email me. And I'll post that. I can post that. I have actually currently as we speak, no social media, building it just through this sort of, I guess, group company kind of thing as it is, and sort of just being separate from it. Social media to me has been, and this is kind of relevant to Passcode. I wanted to develop a character who was like me in that it was kind of out of social media and then had to be forced back into it. And it was sort of, Passcode was a meditation for me as well, as to like the role of social media for a young millennial in America during a very sort of chaotic time. And whether it was healthy or not was sort of the question that we asked with Passcode. I don't have social media as we speak, but once this movie screens, hopefully we'll have like our company to promote to everyone.
Yes. So I highly recommend just creating like, I don't know, like social media, like presence just for your production company, like you mentioned, just create it. And then that way, like people can, follow you in that sense.
Okay.
I guess in the meantime, like what is your email address, or the best email address that people can use to get a hold of you, to reach out to you?
Yeah, so my best email address is Harish is my first name. Last name is Chatrathi, Chatrathi 93 @gmail.com. I'm always on my email, and always looking for new connections and new ways of making new movies and sort of building our little team. So yeah.
That's awesome. So you all watching this Q&A, if you want to, if you've seen Passcode, you want to stay connected with Harish, you want to follow him on what he has next, feel free to reach out via email. And I'm sure that once he has everything else set up, his YouTube channel, his social media presence, like he'll let you know where to go.
Yep.
So Harish, thank you so much for your time. I'm really excited for people to check out Passcode and enjoy the rest of the festival.
Thank you so much, Christina, and really, really excited for this festival and for everything you've done to make this happen.
Thank you.